Quinn. My name is Michael, and I'm one of the booksellers here. I'm very pleased you'll be joining us to celebrate Kim Away's Chasing Dreams, Becoming a Doctor. Chasing Dreams, Becoming a Doctor. Tonight you'll hear from Kim Away in conversation with Julie Vang. Then there will likely be time at the end of the program for audience questions. After Q&A, please allow Kim to move to the signing counter, which is the glass display case you pass on your way into the store. You may line up there to say hello and get a signed copy of Chasing Dreams, Becoming a Doctor. If you buy a book here this evening, you are not only supporting the author, but also a locally owned independent bookstore, and we cannot thank you enough. Please allow me to introduce our guests. Kim Away lived a very busy life as a child in Cambodia, attending a Khmer school in the mornings and Chinese schools in the afternoons. Kim's aunt, a U.S. citizen, sponsored her father and his family to come to the United States beginning in 1991. They finally arrived 15 years later in 2006 when Kim was 15 years old. English proved to be a challenge in Kim's life in the United States, so opportunities like her English as a second language biology class were especially exciting for her. She joined the Army Reserve after high school and graduated from the University of St. Thomas, majoring in neuroscience. In 2020, Kim graduated with dual Doctor of Medicine and Master of Public Health degrees from the University of Minnesota. She is currently completing her residency training in general surgery and hopes to serve underserved inner-city patients in her future career as a surgeon. Julie Vang is a queer Hmong American-born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota. They graduated from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science in Family Social Science and a minor in Asian American Studies. They have co-edited Green Card STEM Voices, Green Card Youth Voices, Madison and Milwaukee, Green Card Youth Voices Upstate New York, and Our Voices Carried Us Here, a graphic novel anthology. They're committed to a practice of holistic healing, storytelling, and shared liberation. Their work has been held across multiple generations and landscapes, weaving together their life experiences and the medicine of their ancestors. Please join me in welcoming Kim Away and Julie Vang.
I will read a few pages from the book. So I'll be reading page 12 to 14. We arrived in June when it was warm for the United States, but for us it was like, it is cold here. I remember putting on our winter jackets. Looking back, it was pretty funny. I imagined America would have lots of tall buildings and people walking around on the street speaking English everywhere. But then when we got to my aunt's home in Shakopee, there was no tall buildings or anything like that. There was a lot of farmland. I remember thinking, oh, they farm in America. That's weird. I never realized that in America they also farm. I remember my uncle took us to the Mall of America. That was my first time seeing a roller coaster inside a shopping mall. The most challenging part of being in the United States was learning English. It was really difficult for me to learn Chinese in Cambodia, even though I started at age 6 or 7. And now at 15, I have to learn English. I always feel very uncomfortable and embarrassed having to speak English in front of my parents and everyone, or speaking English in public was scary. And when we go to a grocery store, my parents would ask me for help finding something or talking to a sales associate because my English was much better than theirs. Then I realized my parents were having a harder time learning English than me. In Cambodia, they used to be business owners, but now they have to be blue-collar workers. My parents were working in an assembly line of a food packaging company. I remember seeing them going to ESL classes every morning despite working over the shift. They would come home, eat breakfast, and shower, then go to ESL classes at 9 a.m. in the morning. I realized if they could do that, I should be able to learn English.
Thank you so much, Kim, for reading that. My heart is just like, just share with us, as you're reading that passage in your book itself that is now newly published, what was so memorable about that whole experience when you first arrived here and right? right? Your image was
Yeah, it's
this is all the tall buildings, and now finally it's farmland.
you know like so growing up in Cambodia, you watch a lot of movies. And I remember like a scene in a lot of movies. It's like New York City, tall building. Everybody was like speaking English everywhere on the street. You just walk around, and I imagine like when I show up to the U.S., I just automatically know how to speak English because that's what you imagine as a kid. And then when you came here, it's a little bit of culture shock because like, whoa, there's no one here. It's just farmlands, and I think it's kind of interesting like living in this suburban area comparing to like growing up in Phnom Penh, a capital city, like an urban setting, and you walk out and you feel like everybody kind of like doing their own thing. You never really see your neighbor. Sometimes you do. You see their car parked in front of their house, but you're never sure if they're home. So that is interesting. Kind of like something that I never really think about as a kid, and until I came here and kind of compare and contrast that experience of like my reality or expectation when I was little.
Share with us a little bit about your own heritage too. I think it's so unique that a lot of people should know about. Because first, you yourself, your father is Khmer, and then your mother herself is Khmer with Chinese descent. Having shared that, how was your identities grown up and experiencing that in Cambodia, and then that identity coming here into America?
Yeah, this is something that I never really think about until like growing up here in the U.S. It's like it's like in Cambodia my identity, it's more like I'm Chinese, but I'm also Cambodian, but I'm more Chinese because my skin is a little bit more, pale than most of the people growing up in Cambodia. And so my identity is, I feel like I'm Chinese. I have to learn Chinese. My parents at home, sometimes they speak Chinese to me. But when I came to the U.S., I realized like I don't identify myself as Chinese anymore, but rather I identify myself as Cambodian. And I don't speak Chinese anymore. I used to know them, but I couldn't speak Chinese to save my life for that. So I think it's kind of interesting, like, and the environment that you grow up with can be, you can define as one way, and then all of a sudden that environment change, and you have to adapt, and then you kind of change in a different direction that you don't really even realize until you like reflect it. And working through the book, it kind of helped me reflect that a little bit too.
Yeah, because I know because you mentioned a lot of that in your childhood, just right in the beginning, how you would have to go to Cambodian school and then go learn some Khmer, and then and then move, and then you have to get back home and then go to Chinese school. So that was like very apparent in your upbringing, but also like that's where you grew up, and that's what you had to do in that environment.
Yeah, that's very true. It's just you growing up in one environment, you identify as one thing, and then you grow up in a different environment, and all of a sudden you're a different person. I don't think I'm changed that much, but but just kind of seeing the two different versions of myself. Sometimes I think about, if I didn't come here and grow up in Cambodia, what type of person I'd be like. So that's kind of interesting.
Share with us a little bit more about that. Like, how life would be like, as you're reflecting back.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in Cambodia, growing up, you take pride in knowing multiple languages, and going to two different schools, like Khmer and Chinese, and that I didn't even mention in the book, but actually I took English classes, kind of like right before I come to US, I took a couple classes. I only learned ABC. Didn't really have a chance to develop my English skill before I come. But you kind of take pride in knowing multiple languages. But when you come to the US, like people don't really, or at least I feel like people don't really care if you can speak a second language. If you can speak English, then you're good. So that's why I always having, like I kind of mentioned a little bit in the book, like how I always feel like, if I want to be successful, I need to learn English. And if my parent is working hard to do it, I should be able to do that too.
Yeah, because even in the book, you mentioned a lot about English has really been something you struggle with, but that's something you had to also learn how to interpret for your parents, and then also going to school and becoming a doctor, right? Like that was like share a little bit about that journey of like learning English even before, and then are you still learning English? Are there still challenges? Does it feel like it's getting better?
I certainly still learning English every day. I feels like, but I think the English I'm learning right now is not kind of the speaking or Americans, the normal daily activity type of conversation that I need to learn. It's more like I need to learn the medical terminology, learn how to speak like a doctor. But that's like a different story in that regard. But it's like, I think learning, so growing up, when I came here, like learning English feels like something that I have to do so that I can have a career or able to live in the US. But then now I feel like I'm learning English not because like I need to to live in the US. It's more like I'm learning English so I can be a better doctor. So it's kind of different, way of thinking, a different goal that I want to achieve.
Yeah. I mean, you're in a different part of your life.
Yeah,
though.
it is true.
Look at
That
you.
is true.
My goodness. You've worked really hard to be where you are now. So even share a little bit more about you yourself chasing your dreams and becoming a doctor, especially as an immigrant, the importance of it. Like share a little bit about the importance of it from, right? There's been a lot of transition that has happened from before to now. Like share that importance of now learning the terminology to chasing that dream and fulfilling it now.
Yeah, I think it's, I think it's sort of like, I think I talk a little bit in the book, when I first started, like, I never thought like I'm gonna be a doctor or being a surgeon. It's more like, oh, I want to do something to help people, and and then kind of me navigating through that journey, and I discovered maybe medicine is something I can do, and I thought I would be a family medicine doctor, but it turned out I actually do not enjoy doing family medicine work, which is, if I am, would be great, but I'm not. So there's like a different, and I discovered it's like there's different type of doctor, there's different type of specialty that you can become. It's just not, because when you think of doctor, you're thinking about like you see someone in the doctor office in the hospital. You don't imagine like seeing a doctor like or being a surgeon, because you never see a surgeon operating. So it's like my idea, like growing up, I never see that as a possibility. So I think the kind of going back to your question about like chasing dream, it's more like I have one idea of what I want to do, and then try to chase it, and then all of a sudden I realize that's not what I want, so I keep pivoting as I'm going through along this journey. So it's not a one straight line where I have a point A and I have a point B, and I just need to go straight through, but it's more like zigzagging as I'm figuring out my way through this process, and and I'm glad that I'm here now. and not like still in between point A and point B at least.
No, we're glad you're here, right? And it's definitely been right, like you mentioned, like that zigzag. It's been a journey for you, and share with us a little bit about your current reality, right? As you're in your residency trainee as a surgeon. I think people should know more about it. Even you said it yourself, like you yourself didn't have that much ideas or understanding, and the openness of like what a doctor could be and the possibility. Like they want to know your day-to-day life. What's been happening?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe. Sometimes I imagine, Michael, my husband, like sometimes I try to imagine him seeing me, and what would it be like? Because he's not in medicine. He like like one example is like today, I show up to work, and go see some patient in the morning, and then we have to take someone to the operating room, and then it was like a different environment because this patient is like really sick. We need to do something in the OR, and then after that, they fine now, so we have to go back to see more other patient on the floor in the emergency room. It's just a very, to me it's very fluid. It seems like kind of like you're following the flow of the day, and then 4 o'clock I'm done with work and left and then came home.
Yeah.
But then like sometimes I imagine how would Michael react seeing me being in the OR, having my hand inside someone else's abdomen, or cutting someone open, things like that. It's like, how would he react to that?
No.
So when I try to imagine that, it's like, well, like people don't really understand what we do as a surgeon unless you live it and you breathe through it. So it's just different, and I hope people that can come around and help discover it. I think when I was in medical school, I tried to figure out my specialty by shadowing. Even you shadowing a different specialty, you still having a hard time grasping or like understanding what they do in medicine, really. So I think it's hard to discover or like to figure out what you want until you're there. But the thing is, well, I'm grateful that I'm actually happy choosing the career path that I want. And I know people who choose the career path and they didn't end up doing what they set out to do, and that's very disappointing. But at the same time, the silver lining thing is at least they discovered that they didn't like that and they can do something else. So that kind of going back to the point, like there's never a straight line to your goal. It's always going to be a zigzagging process, and you just have to figure that out at some point.
Yeah, such wise words to share about that journey, because oftentimes we can get very narrow-minded about this is who we should become, this is our dreams, and then here you're saying dreams, there's possibilities here. Even if you're chasing and you're becoming a doctor, it's like, look where I'm at now, and if you have no clue what a surgeon is, like, come to me.
That is so true, and you dream of doing one thing,
Yeah.
but sometimes you don't always end up doing what you dream to be. But that's not a bad thing, at least you figure it out, and the most important thing is you figure out something that you're happy with.
And look at you right now as like a published author and your wildest dreams, like, have you ever thought about that? Like, now that you're
No, not even a second.
coming out here and supporting bookstore, right? And then doing such, sharing your stories with other ones. I think it's such a gift that you have opened yourself to even do this. And so walk us through, or even share with us a little bit about being, like, having your story actually being published into a book. Specifically, it's a bilingual book in English and Khmer.
Yeah, it's still weird to be that vulnerable, to share all your story and like feeling like you're an open book, like anyone can just pick it up and open you up and read your story. I mean, some of the story that I share are very true, but it's also a little part of me that you're not necessarily always want to share with other people. It's just like the story of my parents, how hard it is for them to come to the U.S. to establish a life here and to support me through it. Like, to me, I'm really proud of them, but it's not something that I thought to share. And now that I have shared it, I was like, I feel empowered, not only for me, but it's also for them. So it feels like, you know what, it's not a bad thing to share your story and to be vulnerable. I mean, since I have published this book, I have people, my colleague, who have read the book, came up to me and shared their story. Now it's not that they know who I am, but I also get to know them a little bit better. So I think that's the importance of sharing your story, because when you share your story, you're not only able to empower yourself, but you'll also be able to empower others to share the story as well.
Yeah, what a beautiful reality that it has flourished into, and I like share a little bit about even like the bilingual part of it, right? It's like how does it feel for your colleagues now to like see a little part that's like more special and more that's more special and dear to you.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because some of my colleagues they don't know. They know Cambodia. They heard of it before, but they didn't know that what the language looked like. And this is the first time they seeing this in the book. It's like, whoa, this is different. Although obviously they can't read it, but at least I'm able to share with them that there's another world that they really haven't seen yet, and this is my world, and I'm sharing with them. So from that aspect, I think it's really cool to do that.
Beautiful, yeah. Any last message you want to share with people here or people online that they should know about yourself or the book?
Well, I think the wisdom that I can share is, be try to get to have a conversation and share your story, and then learn something from others, or learn the other people's story. Here's a quote. It's in Chinese. I don't know how to say it now. But growing up, I always thought that was like the most, like, it makes sense to me, like the way that it's being said. It's among like 3 men walking, one of them must be your teacher. I think the message in that quote is trying to say, you see people that you don't know them, but there's has to be something about them that you can learn from, and they can be your teacher. So I kind of take that approach. I think going through this experience, I just feel like the more that we can learn from each other, the more better we'll become, because we learn something from each other.
Well, you heard it from the best, everyone. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for just sharing the bravery and the empowerment from your own journey and the vulnerability that goes into it, because creating this, even if you want to even share, like just creating the book itself has been its own little twist and turn journey itself too.
Yeah.
Because this is a graphic novel anthology, so you're working with an illustrator who also needs to understand your story to like fully have that authenticity and translate that into drawing and art. And so thank you so much for honoring that space into a book for everyone and the world to know and read.
Well, thank you for having me.